Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an absolutely incredible sports person, Harsh Mankad. Harsh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Garg. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Harsh is the founder and president at Tenicity in the US. He has been India's number one men's player. He was the national collegiate champion, and he was the number one collegiate player in the US. He was also the national junior tennis champion, and he represented India for the Davis Cup between 2001 and 2010. Harsh has played in all the Grand Slam tournaments. And very interestingly, I must mention that he's from an incredibly illustrious family of sports people. His father, Ashok Mankad, played test matches for India. His mother, Nirupama Mankad, was India's number one tennis player and the first Indian woman to play at Wimbledon. And given my vintage, I have seen both your parents and I've read about them, etc. And they did some amazing things for our country. And Harsh is also the grandson of cricket legend Vinu Mankad. So, Harsh, let's talk first about tennis for a few minutes, and then we'll talk about Tenicity. So my first question to you is that given the genes of cricket and tennis in your blood, what made you select tennis when all your compatriots were probably playing cricket?
Yeah, it's a question I get a lot. And, growing up, I actually started cricket first. I remember going on a trip with my family. My dad was doing a coaching assignment in Northern Ireland, and I was 4 years old. And, we went there during the summer. Dad was coaching, and I was with him a lot, and I learned to play cricket. We have some photographs from, us playing cricket, and I really loved playing cricket as a child. Got into tennis a little later. But I remember one conversation with my parents, and I think I was 8 years old. And they asked me, they said, which sport do you want to pursue? Do you want to be a cricketer or a tennis player? And I remember saying, I want to be a cricketer. But I think that, my dad was a little bit more keen that I pursue an individual sport. And I think it had to do a little bit with his experience in sort of the team setting. And he felt that in an individual sport like tennis, your results are very clear, and there's less room for, maybe the selection of things that you go through the cricketing journey. So that was very interesting. And my mom, of course, was a tennis coach, and at the time was very active in coaching. So I had that opportunity to learn the game and spend a lot of time with her. My uncle was a tennis coach. My brother was an active tennis player. So the family was very involved in tennis, and I got into tennis, and I really liked the physical activity of it. For the entire duration of the game, you're moving, you're physically active, and it's a high skill sport. So definitely it was very challenging, and I really enjoyed playing and got into more structured, I would say, tennis, while I kept pursuing cricket, with my friends and playing sort of in our building. And
Sure. So I know we'll talk more about Tenicity in a little while, but what was it like to train when you were playing tennis as compared to training now?
Yeah, it's, I think the fundamentals remain the same. We, had to put in a lot of time and do a lot of the fundamental drills. I mean, growing up, we spent a lot of time developing our stroke technique, working on our strokes, building the consistency that you need in the game, the accuracy that you need, the mindset, to be goal-driven, to have a purpose, to work hard. You understand that early in your life as a sportsman, that I have to work for things, and how I prepare really matters. So I think those are things that are quite similar to the journey now.
Okay.
What has changed over the time is the game has become, at the more advanced levels, the game has become more physical. And so the physical fitness of it, the power in the game, the stamina, that has changed, and the athletes are much bigger and stronger. So that's one aspect that you have to start thinking, particularly if you're aiming for the highest level from a young age, even in your teenage years. You've got to start thinking of your skill, your game skill, but also the physicality of the game. And the game has become very professional. So again, at the highest level, what it takes to succeed in terms of all of the pieces you need, the funding, the global travel, the professionalism of it has really changed so much that there's a lot more to think about in terms of, and a lot goes into, developing a player.
Very interesting. So the next two questions I'm going to ask you, or next three, a question that I asked Mahesh Bhupati also, who I spoke to about 7-8 months ago. And you have played at similar levels, right at the very top. I'm not a sports person, but I often marvel at what kind of preparation goes in to playing a tennis match. I'd love to get some perspective.
Sure. It's you want to get your mind and body in the best possible shape to perform at your best. So when you think about the body, the preparation, the diet, paying attention to the diet, eating well, making sure you're eating at the right intervals. The energy part of it is very important. So if you're playing a match, let's say in the morning around 10 o'clock, you want to be mindful of when you're having your breakfast. What sort of is your routine to fuel yourself for the match. And then I think rest is very important. So being very disciplined, having a good lifestyle, it becomes critical to be able to perform at your best. And then mentally preparing yourself for the match, thinking about your game plan, who you're playing, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, how are you going to impose your strengths on the match. So it's a competitive environment. So you have to think that way and then prepare so you have some clarity before you go on the court in terms of how you see the game plan developing. And then just preparing yourself before the match mentally. I think different players have different routines, but coming in, I always like, coming into the match with a degree of calmness. And it's almost like, you're trying to conserve your physical and mental energy and prepare it for the match, knowing that this match can be a long battle and can take a lot out of you. So every ounce of energy, mentally and physically, counts, and how you prepare can make the difference in that third set or the fifth set, or in those tense moments when you need that little extra clarity in decision making or that little bit more trust. So it's marginal, and a lot of the preparation makes a difference.
Fascinating. And as an aside, how important is superstition? I mean, I've known people who wear the same T-shirt or who wear, carry some kind of a colored hanky in their pocket. Is that also something to just, handle the mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about calming your mind down. And a lot of times when you're doing certain things that you feel are working, you keep on with that just so that, it's part of your routine. And it's one more thing that settles the mind and gives you that inner belief and inner trust. And then you can focus on sort of, the match or executing your strokes. So I remember in college when I won the national title, we were playing in Texas, and my coach, me, would come up to the club every day. And, I was not seeded in the tournament, but I kept progressing. And when we got to the final, we came into the parking lot, and the spot that we park in was open, and the parking lot was quite full, but that one spot was open. And we, would park the car every day in that one spot. So it became a bit of a superstition, but also a good luck charm.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and then you sort of feel like, okay, things are going to go well.
Absolutely. So one more question, on for players who've been at your level, you're traveling, you're playing, you're traveling, you're playing. How are you getting your body to adjust to the fatigue of travel, get ready for the match, then travel again?
Yeah, it's something we do from a young age. So you get used to it. I started traveling internationally at the age of 13. We were representing India. We went to Hong Kong. That was my first international trip, playing for the country. Then we went to Japan. And then as I got into the 15, 16, we're traveling across Asia, playing a lot of junior tournaments, then to Europe. So travel is part of the excitement and part of the life of tennis. And so we actually love it. A lot of tennis players love to travel and see the world. And I think that excitement, keeps the energy going. And it's very much part of the circuit. I think as you travel a lot, and sometimes I remember flying long distances from the US to Japan, landing, and then you're maybe playing a match the next day. So you feel like you need to go right away to the courts to get a little hit in, to get acclimatized to the conditions. So imagine getting off a 12, 13-hour flight and then taking your bags and maybe just dropping it off at the hotel, but you're on the court within 2 hours and you're trying to get a practice in. So I think that's part of the resilience and physical toughness that it takes to succeed on the tennis tour. Over time, you become aware of your body and again, your mind as well, and you learn to make adjustments. So if you're feeling tired, you're feeling down, a little bit low on energy, you might adjust your all, maybe rest that evening, play the next day if possible. So that's how you kind of have to manage things, but very much part of all that it takes to succeed in tennis.
Amazing. So Harsh, now let's move to your venture, Tenicity. Tell me about this venture and what were you doing here and what were the objectives of setting it up?
Now, I've spent my whole life in tennis as a player, always striving for excellence. And my parents and family, after they got done playing, they went into coaching. So it was about developing others. And my grandfather, Mankad too, was, after he got done with his professional cricket career, he was into coaching as well and ran cricket coaching programs in Mumbai. And so did my grandfather. My mother's father, George Vasant, was a Davis Cup player and then a coach. Wow. And was a national level coach. So our family over the last 3 generations have been athletes, and then we've been in coaching. And so after my professional career, I really found my passion in coaching and sharing everything that I learned to develop other players. And so Tenicity is born out of that lifelong interest in sports and tennis and developing others. The company was launched in 2016, so about 5 years ago, and it has evolved, but always stayed true to the focus of improving the standards of player development. And now, over the last few years, as the tennis program has been growing, really delivering a positive culture of developing players. So encouraging them, focusing on participation, and thinking big picture about the benefits of sport throughout the life of a person. So it's not just about winning and becoming a professional or winning championships. It's about really trying to grow the sport, get a lot of kids playing, enjoying the sport, and benefiting from all that sport has to offer throughout our life.
Amazing, amazing. And you started Tenicity initially as an online platform. What were your thoughts then? And then we'll talk about you're making it a physical academy as well.
Right. So I spent a few years after my tennis, I got into coaching. I was leading a program. And then I went back to business school and spent a few years in doing my MBA. And during that time, with a classmate of mine, we were thinking about who also had a tennis background. We got this idea of building an online platform that essentially would help to organize the communication and training of each player. So you think of a player playing in an academy, you've got your coaches, your parents, and we built this platform with tools that would help to systematically organize all of the communication. So their training plans, their training videos, their match results, bring it all together and help them to learn from this information and keep progressing in their tennis. So that was the initial start. And after a few years of doing it, I evolved more into getting closer to the player again, getting back on the court, growing coaching programs. And so now Tenicity is really a tennis program grassroots coaching, which is growing in Minnesota. I'm also working with some competitive level players at the school and college level. I travel quite often to India and do camps there. And so we're supporting players there. And the tech piece of it has, become a smaller part, but we use that same methodology or way of thinking of having a plan for your development. It's not just about playing. It's about, thinking through that systematic plan for improvement, which I believe helped me a lot in my career.
Incredible. And now you are coaching over 300 people. My question is, what goes into making a tennis champion?
So, yeah, if you're talking about elite level sport and, at the highest level, whether it's succeeding at the national level in the juniors or in collegiate level, which a lot of junior players are aspiring to, getting to the Division I college level, and then beyond playing professional tennis, there's a lot of pieces that go into developing a player. It's hard work from the team. It's a lot of hours on the court in tough conditions. So this is a very tough job to say, because I've been a player, and as a player, of course, you're working very hard, but you're focused on your journey. As a coach or as someone involved in player development, it's all about others. And you have to be thinking about all the other players. How do you motivate them? How do you encourage them? What are their specific strengths and weaknesses, and where do they need that further boost? But broadly, I think you need very good tennis coaching so that you have solid technique, that your technique is not limiting you at higher levels. You need a good development plan in terms of your skill progressions. And then fitness that we touched on. The mental side of the game becomes very important. And then nutrition. So all these aspects have to come together as a whole. And you've got to continue to encourage and support the player with all of these pieces over a long period of time. This is a journey that a lot of players may start at the age of 7 and 8. And you're really looking at 10, 15 years of that sustained amount of focus and commitment. So there's a lot that goes into it. And nowadays, with the level that there is in the sport, you really need to bring the very best to the player to keep moving them to the next level.
Incredible. So I've got two more questions relating to tennis and Tenicity. You said you have run camps in India as well. You come here. From an India perspective, we used to have far more recognizable and big tennis names till as recently as Leander Pace, etc. And maybe I'm getting old, or maybe we don't have such high profile names any longer. But what is happening? For years, I've always heard that with so many years, starting with the Amritraj brothers, and, now we'll have a floodgate of tennis champions coming out, but that hasn't happened. What is not happening in India?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And so many of the stars of tennis were from the 60s and 70s. The Amritraj
and then
brothers,
you were there. You were at international levels, yeah.
But before that generation, during the time of Bjorn Borg and McEnroe, we had some players, again, a few players. So it's not that India was producing a pipeline of players. There were a few tennis players playing at the highest level. And it's interesting what happened after that, because, throughout our history, if you take a bigger look over the last 50, 60 years, there's still just a handful of tennis players, right, who've made it to the highest level of the game. But 99.9% of your talent has not reached that level. So the question is, as you're asking, why?
Yeah.
And, it's not one thing, but I think that as the game of tennis changed also in the 80s, a lot of hardcore tennis came in. We traditionally, our style of tennis in India was more grass court based. It was a finesse based game, a lot of feel and finesse and using your mind to strategize. And once the hardcore tennis came in the 80s, 90s, the game became much more powerful. So the fitness side of it became more prominent. The technique also changed. So those things happened. The game became very professional. The tour also became very global. So at a time in the 60s, 70s, you could play tournaments in India and play against some top talent in the world. By the time it came to 90s, 2000, you had to travel mostly out of India to play. So the economics also changed. And to pursue a tennis career, professionally, the economics, I think, became very, very difficult for any Indian family. And without a strong system, and when I talk about system, whether it's at the city level or state level or national level, without a system that was nurturing and developing players, including funding them and investing in them, it became very, very difficult.
Okay.
So only a few, when you speak of Leander Paes, this is a player who won a junior Grand Slam. He was the #1 junior in the world.
Absolutely.
And the same with Sania, and this is a very high level of junior talent.
Correct.
Exceptional. So they're on a very high trajectory anyways. And they were able to pursue the sport through a lot of family initiative too, to reach out and get support and to continue this journey. But again, to expect your talent to be at that level, most of your talent is not going to be at that level at 17, 18. Doesn't mean they don't have the potential. A lot of the American juniors, for example, that are breaking through at the professional level, or any country, you look at the UK, the US, Australia, a lot of their juniors aren't necessarily the best of the best in the world in juniors. They're maturing at different ages, but there's a system there to support them through those years, through the teenage years, through the transition phase, the early 20s, and then they're breaking through at 22, 23, 24. So you really need a system, and unfortunately in tennis, we haven't had that. We've had that in cricket, because cricket, we have a totally different setup, culture. We have many kids playing. The economics of the sport are very different. You play for your high school team. My dad recently talked about it. He played for his school team in Bombay, got into the state level, got into the Ranji team, started playing nationally, got into the test team. And that journey is very systematic. And once you get into your state team, and once you start getting into the national team, your funding is taken care of, right? You're part of the Indian national team. So you don't have to worry about, spending for your ticket to go to the West Indies and play and spend 3 months there and figure out how are you going to keep yourself going. In tennis, you do. You need to think about, how am I going, where is the funding coming from? And so I think it's very, very different. And I think the challenge of becoming a tennis player from India is huge and largely not well understood. Now it's changing. I think the India in the last 5 years or so, and we can talk about that, is changing with the amount of now focus and support that's going into sport. But to try to become, a tennis player, like I said, and to be able to put all of these resources together to pursue it as a career is a monumental task. And most of my peers went into other fields because they recognized that this was going to be almost impossible to do. So only the very top talent and those that could bring some support were able to pursue it. The rest of the talent really went into other fields, and they're excelling in other fields. You look at finance, you look at corporate in India and in the US, you look at a number of fields, you'll find tennis players who grew up playing tennis in India, succeeding, leading organizations. So these are individuals very driven, very capable. Unfortunately, they weren't able to take their talent to that highest level in tennis. They went into other fields.
Fascinating. So Harsh, we're going to be running out of time. I'm going to ask you one last question. And that is that every sport has got a lot of technology coming in to support the sports people. What is happening with technology in tennis?
Yeah, so technology has different facets to it. You have the fan experience. So at the highest level, again, there's technology on the court. As you can see, US Open now didn't have lines people. The technology was calling the lines, and so maybe it's made it a little bit more accurate. There are aspects of how they present the sport on TV that make it more engaging. So there's that piece. There is the piece of analytics that the top players are using to learn more about their game, to learn about the opponents, to strategize, to continue to develop. There's a lot of video-based information that you can see your match now, even if you're playing at the college level or at the lower levels of the tour. You can see yourself, you can learn. So those are all improvements in technology. And then at the grassroots level, really, it's I'm finding that the environment is simple, and that human connection is very important. So, at that level, you don't really need a lot of technology, in my opinion. You need to connect with the player. Right. So as coaches, we're getting to know the player. We're connecting to them. We're trying to inspire and motivate them, create a positive environment for them to learn the game. So, and then also it's a personality thing. Even at the professional level, some players like a lot of analytics and data and like to learn, and others try to keep it simple. And they can see things and instinctively learn. So it's a very personal thing on how you want to use technology. Like anything, there needs to be a clear purpose, and it needs to fit well into the environment. And if it's moving you forward in your objective, that's a win-win.
Fascinating. Harsh, thank you very much. It's been such a privilege speaking to you. I mean, I was really looking forward to this conversation, to talk to you, and, I was so fascinated with such an incredible family. And you said 3 generations of sports people, and that also right at the very top. Thank you for taking me through your tennis journey, and thank you for telling me everything about Tenicity. Good luck to you, and I hope to stay in touch.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.